Hello.
Hey Scott.
What's your name?
Roshni.
Hey Roshni.
Hi.
And where did you grow up and where do you live now?
I grew up just outside Glasgow, and I now live just a few miles from where I grew up. So you can say Glasgow and surrounding areas my hometowns, really.
Right. And what's been your spiritual practice or contemporary practice that you've done mostly throughout your life?
It's an interesting question because there hasn't really been one practice. There's been a profound thread of spirituality throughout my life. I grew up in quite a right-wing, hardline Christian family. When I became a teenager, I became very curious about different faiths and different spiritual practices. So I spent a bit of time studying Hindu philosophy, attending temples, because there was always a real connection to India as I was growing up. I don't know why, I just always had a fascination about Indian culture. So I started learning the Hindi language, and my Hindi teacher was a very spiritual person, so I went to temple with her. I went to a lot of mosques, and I guess just began a journey of searching for what divinity meant to me, what spirituality meant to me, which led me through lots of different practices and eventually led me to this thing that we do, which is Ashtanga Yoga. And that seems to be the thing that has stuck and has resonated most strongly, certainly at this juncture in my life.
And when you look at that process, how has it been for you? When did you start? When did you start this quest, this quest for divinity, this divine?
I feel like it's always been there because certainly growing up in a Christian family, to not believe in God wasn't really an option or even a consideration. Like divinity always felt very real to me. It felt like something that was really present. And I attended a Catholic school. I was taught by nuns who, of course, again, had a very deep sense of their own spirituality. And actually, when I reflect on this, I guess, because one thing people might not notice about me immediately is that I don't have any sight. I was born totally blind. So again, I guess when you think about divinity and you have no sight, it's actually really simple to believe in something that you can't see, because everything around you is part of that space. So everything around you is divinity, I guess. So I think I always had a natural wonder and a natural curiosity about the world and also how I fitted in it, because I was acutely aware from a very young age that I was somehow different. I don't think I really knew what being blind was all about. It was just a word that people said of me. So maybe the search for divinity was also linked to this search with, well, who am I and what has this divinity created? And what do I do with the being that I've been given, the life that I've been given? What does it mean to be this person? So I think that's what this search is all about. And the search is ongoing, I think, in a lot of ways. It doesn't end.
So when you look at your being born blind, and what I'm hearing you saying is that you had no reference to see anything as different.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. Because I grew up in the 80s, and certainly back then, I wasn't seeing or feeling or encountering anybody remotely like me. Most of the kids that I was educated alongside had other quite complex disabilities alongside their sight loss. When I would listen to the radio or watch TV or read books, nothing that resembled my reality was reflected back at me. So when you face that and you don't know how to be, and your sort of educators or your parents and those close to you have no reference point for that either, you become quite isolated. And I guess what you do with that can take different forms, but for me it became about looking beyond and looking perhaps for meaning in the situation and trying to connect to something higher that would sort of elevate me beyond my present state, and give me a value, an empowerment that I wasn't finding in the world around me.
So you've had like this deeply spiritual aspect to your life since
Yeah.
you were very young, and do you feel that's held you through as you've just grown up and matured and moved into adulthood?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely, yeah. I've had a very busy life, a very beautiful and blessed life, but also a very chaotic life, a lot of trauma in my early life. And I feel really blessed for having always had a deeper sense of, in everything there is purpose, in everything there is meaning. And even if I couldn't find it at the time when some of that chaotic stuff was going on, there was always a thread, maybe the thread from the search, that kept me present, kept me striving, kept me climbing, so that even after some of those things that happened to me, I could always see this is the wisdom, or this is the wonder in all of this. And I still feel that, particularly manifested in yoga practice, because it's so physical, it's so evolutionary, and you can see your evolution from asana to asana, from day to day, from life experience to life experience, and it's all connected, and that's really special.
So what was your movement into something called Ashtanga Yoga, and how did that kind of come alive in you? How did that manifest?
It was really beautiful because it found me at a time when I was very, very broken. I'd been working in Asia. I came back very sick with malaria. I had a lot of personal stuff going on. I got a diagnosis of PTSD. So my life was in a bit of flux, really. And I wrote to a friend of mine in India who'd always been a bit of a spiritual guide to me. And I just said to him that, I feel really disjointed. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not really moving past these things. And he said, I think you should do some yoga. And I think I emailed back a few kind of 4-letter expletives, and I was like, you think making some shapes is going to help this stuff? Are you joking? But he kept on saying this, and this is somebody that I regarded as a bit of a spiritual mentor. So I did some research, and I figured out that yoga takes many forms, and a lot of yoga teachers offer one-to-ones, because I never felt very comfortable. I didn't do a lot of sport when I was a kid, and I certainly didn't like the experience of going to like an exercise class, because there's like a person standing at the front making shapes that you can't see. And by the time you've figured out what they're doing, they've moved on to like 10 shapes later. So that never appealed to me. So when I found out that I could learn in a kind of one-to-one environment, I decided to give it a go. And I was just really fortunate that the teacher I went to came from an Ashtanga background. So she very quickly introduced me to Ashtanga and Mysore style, and it absolutely clicked so strongly, because I realized that I could have that individual one-to-one experience, but in the environment of a Mysore space where everybody is sharing, connected, yet different. And that felt really significant to me, and that felt really inclusive to me, because I just needed to learn this pattern and be present to it. I didn't need to see what anyone was doing. So it felt like such a gift.
So what was it like walking first into that first Mysore room with a Mysore teacher?
The first time I walked into a Mysore room, I just remember the sensuality of it. The smell of incense mingled with the smell of all these people sweating and falling apart. And then the sound of the breath just stopped me in my tracks. it touched something really raw deep inside, like this is what it is to be alive. This is what it is to breathe. And because of some of my trauma and my PTSD, I'd become very disconnected from my physical self. So to feel physicality in such a tangible way like that, and then to feel it through my own body and my own movement, and to start to get back in touch with my own emotions and my own sensuality and my own sense of self through physicality, felt so special, so empowering. It felt like a rebirth in a way, because I'd lost that for many, many years. So it definitely brought me back to life, I think.
Mm-hmm. And so the evolution of Ashtanga Yoga as a practice, being a body, movement and breath, and how's that evolved for you?
It's taken time. Obviously, like anyone beginning Ashtanga for the first time, I had, very little movement. I had parts of my body that I'd cut off from, so I had to discover them again and figure out how to move and how to be. It took some time to find teachers who felt comfortable and confident to teach me, because the sight loss became a barrier sometimes. People were perhaps anxious about how to interact, how to convey stuff, how to keep me safe. And it wasn't always easy for me to articulate what I needed, because I didn't necessarily know where we were going with asanas that I hadn't done before. And of course, there are some challenges that are unique, I think, to sight loss around things like balance. And if you have no sight and you have no drishti or gaze point, how do you compensate for that? Do you even need to? Is it that you need to find a physical point that you can touch, or is it that you need to find something else inside? So there's been a real journey of discovery, and that's where I would say, the relationship that you and I share, because you've taught me for a few years now, is so special, because we built up such a sense of trust and safety actually through the Mysore practice, and through helping me discover where I am in space, and also develop a really healthy, empowered relationship through touch in the way that Mysore teaching manifests itself. And that's been really special to me. It's been a real gift to me, and your openness to it. Because again, when I travel around and visit different Mysore rooms, I don't see anybody like me. So I understand why it's really difficult for teachers, and your openness to it is something that I really treasure and has really helped me evolve in the practice.
So is it something that's like in yoga rooms, that this is kind of rare? How have you found going to other yoga rooms as a visually impaired person?
I've been really lucky, because here in Scotland we don't have a massive amount of yoga shalas, but the few that we do are really fantastic and really inclusive and really affirming of me. And the Ashtanga community here is quite small, so I've made brilliant friendships through that practice. And again, I think that's a real gift as well, because for me what's different about that is that the engagement is through doing. So people don't necessarily know that I'm visually impaired to begin with. They just see me doing the practice that they're doing. So they're connecting through a much more equal lens. And that's been a real gift. But it's certainly not the case everywhere. I have had teachers say that they would prefer me not to come, that they would feel a bit uncomfortable about it. I have friends who've wanted to engage with this practice and who have been told no. I think it's really sad, because when you look at the history of Ashtanga Yoga, a lot of teachers back in Mysore were supporting practitioners with complex illnesses and impairments and disabilities. And I think it's really sad that that's lost from our Mysore rooms and our Instagram culture. But at the same time, I don't blame teachers for it altogether either, because I think a lot of our TTs don't reflect this diversity of humanity either. So I think we have a responsibility to try and put that back, and that's where I think these portraits are so powerful. And I've watched some of those that you've produced recently with people like Jack, and they're so deeply powerful because they're giving a voice to my community that's definitely missing, I think, in current Ashtanga culture.
What do you think, like, when you think about studios not saying they can't take people, visually impaired people, what do you say to that? What could be said, what could be offered to studio owners and teachers who feel like there's something, a barrier?
Well, we need to be able to open up a dialogue about what it is to engage with this practice when you bring an impairment or when you bring a different way of being. And from my perspective, I actually don't think that anybody wants to be exclusive. I really don't think that in the vast majority of cases. I think people are just anxious about doing the right thing and about keeping themselves safe and keeping their practitioners safe. And that's understandable. So I think we need to bring a compassion to it. But when we engage with this practice, we engage usually through curiosity about what we can do and what our students do. So we need to bring that to this whole conversation and open up the dialogue. And it's not necessarily about saying yes or no, but it's about saying, how can we navigate this? How can we create a conduit through which we can offer this? And that's always how you and I have worked together. You know, I remember the first time we chatted about working together, you said to me, I haven't taught someone like you, but you just tell me what you need and we'll figure it out. And that's absolutely what we've done, is how we figured it out. And through that, we've built trust and language and communication and amazing ways of working.
Yeah,
So
you remember you
done.
first came in the room in that big workshop that I was doing.
Yeah,
You tried to hide.
I did. I tried to hide behind the door.
I know.
Yeah, you didn't let me.
No, I don't want you to hide. You don't need to. What do you think this practice of Ashtanga Yoga has given you?
Oh, so much. So much. It's given me a real felt sense of self. It's helped me evolve beyond my past, beyond many of the stories that I tell myself or society tells me about me. And it's not that those things disappear, you know, they're always present, but you have a different lens through which to see them, different tools to meet them. And having this practice that is different every day, that evolves every day, and sometimes it's beautiful and empowering and you feel like you can change the world, and sometimes it's horrible and nothing works and you fall out of backbends or you don't get up in the first place. all of it is a gift, and all of it is a chance to come back, to reconnect, to feel what it is to be alive, to be curious, to be moving, to be living, to be meeting life. And I, just as I hid behind the door in your workshop, I definitely did hide for a lot of my early life. I hid from myself, from my own potential. And this practice has definitely taught me how to move beyond that. How to live it, how to be curious, and to keep pushing boundaries. And I've changed my job, I've traveled a lot. And I would not have done those things if not for this practice. So I treasure it.
And so what's one thing that you've learned about yourself through all of this that you would like to share with others?
That we are each incredibly special and powerful and unique and that we have infinite potential. And as much as, as disabled people, some of us have a tendency to value ourselves on what we can output because society sees us that way. So you find a lot of disabled people are uber educated because if you have 3 degrees, maybe society will see you differently. Society probably won't see you differently. And the challenge is to sit with that and find that still point within you that says, I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. And to keep saying that so that seed of I am enough grows so that you have the contentment, the strength and the resilience to meet the world. And that's definitely the biggest lesson that this practice has taught me.
Thank you, Roshni.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure.